The first $10,000 feels huge. It feels like proof that you're finally doing something right. You look at the number and think, I'm not broke anymore. And honestly, that feeling is powerful. It's motivating. It's validating. But it's also dangerous because the first 10K creates a false sense of progress. It feels like stability, but it isn't. It feels like security, but it's fragile. For a lot of people, that moment becomes a trap. They relax too early. They change behavior too soon. They assume the hardest part is over. And then something small happens. A car repair, a surprise bill, a slow month at work, a trip, a family obligation, one decision that feels harmless, and suddenly the 10K is 7K, then 5K, then 2K. Then you're back at zero, wondering how it disappeared so fast. Not because you're irresponsible, not because you're lazy, not because you don't want it enough, but because the first 10K doesn't mean what most people think it means. Today, we're going to talk about why the first $10,000 feels like progress and why, financially, it usually isn't, until you build the right structure around it. My name is Max, and this channel exists for one reason: to explain money the way it should have been explained to us, the way it behaves in real life, not the way motivational advice pretends it behaves. Because most money milestones sound great on paper, they look impressive on social media, they feel like checkpoints. First 1K, first 10K, 6 figures. The problem is, real money doesn't care how a number feels. Money only cares about structure and pressure. If you're watching this, there's a good chance you're working toward your first big number, or you already hit it, your first $10,000 saved. And everyone says the same thing. Congrats, you're ahead of most people. You're doing great. Now you're safe. But then reality doesn't match the promise. You still feel cautious. You still feel one problem away from stress. You still don't feel free. That disconnect creates confusion, and confusion leads to bad decisions. You either over-celebrate and spend it, or you freeze and hoard it without a plan, or you treat it like a magic shield and let it absorb everything. This video is not here to downplay progress. Saving $10,000 is a real achievement. It proves you can move in the right direction. But it's also the most misunderstood milestone in personal finance. So instead of celebrating the number, we're going to break down what the first $10,000 actually represents, why people often lose it right after they build it, and what has to change if you want that progress to become real stability. Not emotionally, structurally. Here's the myth. The first $10,000 means you're financially okay. That myth spreads because it's easy. It's a clean milestone. It's a round number. And compared to zero, it looks like you climbed a mountain. People love milestones because they feel like a finish line. But money doesn't work in relative terms. It works in functional terms. Ask one question. What does $10,000 actually do for you? If your rent is $1,500 a month, that's not years of security. That's about 6 months of rent if nothing else exists. But life always exists. Groceries, transportation, insurance, utilities, phones, subscriptions, emergency stuff that never schedules itself politely. And if you have any debt, credit cards, loans, payments, the security shrinks even faster because your monthly obligations are already eating future income. So what is $10,000? It's not freedom. It's not stability. It's not success. It's a buffer, temporary breathing room. That's why it feels so good. For the first time, you're not living purely on the edge. You can handle a problem without panic. That emotional relief is real, but here's where people get confused. They assume emotional relief equals financial safety. It doesn't. The first $10,000 is especially misleading because it's often built during a focused, motivated season. You were careful. You said no to stuff. You tracked spending. You pushed for a few months. Maybe you got a bonus or a tax refund. Maybe you had unusually low expenses. In other words, you built it under conditions that don't last forever. Then life returns to normal. Motivation fades. Expenses creep back. 1 or 2 unexpected hits land. And because the $10,000 feels like a shield, you start using it like one. You start thinking, I can handle it. You start saying, I'll rebuild it next month. You start treating it like a renewable resource. But for most people, $10,000 is not renewable yet. It's fragile capital. So the myth isn't saving is bad. The myth is believing the first $10,000 means the game is won. It's not. It's proof you can save once, not proof your financial system can survive pressure, drift, and mistakes. And until you build structure around that money, the first $10,000 is just the beginning of a new problem: false confidence. Most people reach their first $10,000 using a common model: save what's left, cut expenses temporarily, push hard for a few months. That model can work to create a milestone, but it fails at creating stability because it relies on three things that real life doesn't guarantee: perfect months, high motivation, no compounding emergencies. When money advice says just save more, it's assuming your life is quiet and predictable. But life is aggressive. Rent increases, food gets more expensive, transportation costs creep up, subscriptions multiply quietly. A single month can carry multiple hits: a repair, a medical bill, a travel obligation, a gift, a sudden expense you didn't plan for. And when those hits happen, the save what's left model collapses because there is no structure controlling the exits. You end up using the $10,000 as a universal solution. Everything drains from the same bucket. That creates a pattern. You save for months, you hit $10,000, then you spend from it to handle real life. Then you feel like you failed. Then you repeat. But you didn't fail, the model failed. Because the model treats savings as parked money, not as part of a system. It doesn't define what the money is for. It doesn't set boundaries. It doesn't separate goals. It doesn't prevent the worst habit in personal finance: turning your savings into your spending account whenever life gets loud. Here's an example. You have $10,000. Your car needs $900. You pay it. Fine. Next month, you have a slow income month. You pull $600. Fine. Then a friend's wedding. You pull $400. Fine. Then you reward yourself because you've been stressed. You pull $250. Fine. None of these decisions feel dramatic. That's the problem. The money disappears through small, justified exceptions. And because it wasn't structured, it couldn't protect itself. The common model also creates a trap. It makes you think your financial health depends on discipline forever. You believe you have to stay perfectly strict to maintain progress. That's exhausting, and exhaustion always breaks discipline. So the issue isn't saving. The issue is saving without jobs, without rules, without a system that assumes you'll be human. Your first $10,000 needs structure, not motivation, because motivation is a mood. Structure is a machine. The invisible trap after 10K is not spending. It's misreading the milestone. The first 10K changes how you feel, not how your financial reality works, and feelings are expensive. You look at the number and your brain assigns meaning to it. I'm okay now. I'm safe. I can breathe. And because that feeling is new, you start making decisions from the feeling instead of from the system. This is what false progress looks like. You start upgrading small things because you feel past the struggle. You stop tracking because it feels too tight, and now you deserve peace. You say yes to spending because the number makes you feel like you have room. You let your buffer absorb lifestyle inflation without noticing. And it happens quietly because the first 10K doesn't disappear with one big explosion. It leaks. Here's the mental trap. You treat savings like income. You start living as if the 10K is a monthly resource instead of a one-time foundation. So your budget becomes, I'll pay what I can, and if something happens, I'll use savings. That sounds reasonable, but it trains your brain to treat the savings as the fallback for everything, which means your system never improves. Another trap is psychological. Once you hit a milestone, your brain wants a new one. You chase the next number instead of building the structure that keeps numbers stable. So you set goals like, I want 20K, I want 50K, but you ignore the more important question. What drains your money automatically when you're not paying attention? Because the hidden enemy isn't a single expense, it's automatic behavior.
subscriptions renewing, delivery apps, small convenience spending, slowly rising fixed costs, buying time with money because you're tired. And if your system relies on you noticing every leak, you will lose. Real life doesn't give you that attention consistently. That's why advice that assumes perfect behavior fails. The best systems assume mistakes will happen. They build buffers and rules so mistakes don't become disasters. So yes, 10K is progress, but without structure, it becomes a confidence illusion. And confidence illusions are how people fall backward while thinking they're moving forward.
The correct way to see the first 10K is simple. It's capital, not comfort. It's not a trophy, it's not a finish line, it's not permission to relax. It's the foundation of a system. At this stage, the most important question is not how much do I have, it's how long does this money survive under pressure? Because pressure is the real test. If your 10K disappears after 1 or 2 normal life events, that doesn't mean you failed, it means your system has no walls. So what does structure look like at 10K? It means your money has jobs before you touch it. It means you stop treating savings as one big pile. You begin separating it into roles, even if it's just mental at first, even if it's just separate accounts later. For example, emergency buffer. Money for unexpected hits, repairs, medical, urgent problems. Stability buffer, money that prevents panic during a slow income month. Planned expenses, predictable future costs, annual fees, car maintenance, travel. Future building, money that actually moves you forward, investing, skills, mobility. The difference is huge because now when something happens, you don't ask, can I afford it? You ask, which job pays for this? That single shift changes your behavior automatically. It prevents random decisions. It reduces guilt. It removes the emotional argument of I deserve it because your system already decided. And here's the key. With structure, you can feel calm with less money because calm is not about the size of the number, it's about the predictability of the flow. Without structure, you can earn more and still feel stressed because bigger numbers without walls just leak faster. So the purpose of the first 10K is not to feel rich, it's to build your first real system, a ledger mindset, where money is directed, not reacted to. That's when progress becomes real. Here's the rule that turns the first 10K into actual progress. Never let your savings become your decision maker. Savings should absorb shocks, not justify behavior. If your savings becomes the thing you dip into whenever you want, then the 10K milestone is just a temporary pause before returning to chaos. So what's the system? It's not complicated. It's not obsessively tracking every dollar. It's giving money a job before it arrives and rules before it moves. A simple structure can look like this. Define 4 buckets. Jobs, emergency, true emergencies only, stability, income fluctuations, planned, known upcoming costs, growth, future you. Write the rules once. Emergency, only for unexpected, necessary hits. Stability, only when income drops below baseline. Planned, only for expenses you already expect. Growth, never touched for random spending. Make decisions only through the rules. When something appears, you don't feel it out, you classify it. Is it an emergency, a planned cost, a stability issue, or just a want? Build a tiny mistake margin, because you will be human. A small monthly allowance for unplanned spending prevents the I deserve this explosion. This is what people miss. Systems that require perfection break. Systems that assume mistakes survive. And that's the difference between 10K as a flex and 10K as a foundation. Because once money has destinations, decisions become easier. Spending becomes intentional, saving becomes automatic, mistakes become survivable, progress becomes durable. You stop reacting, you start directing. And that's when your first 10K actually becomes what you thought it was. Not a number, but control. The first $10,000 matters, but not for the reason people think. It doesn't mean you're safe, it means you're capable. It means you proved you can create distance from zero, and that's huge. But capability only becomes stability when structure exists. If you treat the first $10,000 like a finish line, it will vanish the moment life gets loud. If you treat it like capital, the foundation of a system, it becomes the first real step toward freedom. This channel isn't about chasing milestones for the dopamine hit of a round number. It's about building money systems that survive reality. Unstable months, rising costs, mistakes, pressure, and life. So celebrate the win, but don't stop at the number. Build the ledger, give the money jobs, write the rules, protect the foundation. This is Max's ledger, and this is where real progress starts.